So I'm going to invite up a relatively new addition to our faculty in orthopedics. Teresa Alpert is a certified orthotist and pedorthist, and she's really a leader nationally in pedorthics. So we were very fortunate to steal her away from Baltimore and have her join us. So she's going to speak with us on footwear and orthoses for the athletes. So welcome, Teresa.
Thanks for staying so late in the afternoon to join us. So I've been told I have to be a fast talker. So shoes and orthotics, form and function is what we're going to review today. So we've talked a lot about locomotion today, and what we know about that, it's the ability to move from one place to the other, and how we do that in a safe way. Ground force reaction, and Rob did a lot of great slides and presentations on ground force reaction, but it's Newton's third law of motion states that for every action, there is an equal or opposite reaction, and that's what we're trying to deal with our sports injuries and how to prevent them. So according to that, when we walk or run, every time our foot lands, there is what is called ground force reaction. So everything starts from the heel up. When the foot hits the ground, the reaction of ricocheting in the body occurs. So these are just some simple demonstrations of that. You know, a ballet dancer lifts up and then lands down in form, or the pinball machine levers. It's the same thing with our body. And then I'll keep this brief because Rob also explained the velocity and how the body moves in motion and how the masses of force are greater at the lower level, the limb, and that is impact through force and velocity and carrying the body's mass over. Again, Dr. Hunt talked about this study that was done with the National Collegiate Athletic Association, and they reviewed 15 sports, and out of 1 million exposures that were captured over a 16-year period, more than 50% of those injuries were lower extremity, and the ankle ligament sprains were 15% of those, so very high. More than 27,000 ankle ligament sprains were reported over that 16 years, and you know, what they found in their conclusion was that prophylactically bracing or taping the neuromuscular balance exercising PT programs can reduce the rate of lower extremity injuries by 50%. That's huge. All of the PTs in this room, everybody who's doing taping, we can actually help prevent these injuries. And that's very, very important information to take away from this. Footwear, the great unloader. Footwear, comfort, performance, and injury prevention. So athletic footwear is designed for so many different things, and what's really important is that the right shoes should be used for the right sport and the right intervals of activity so that the shoe can perform at its optimum. Cleated footwear for soccer, football, different types of tread patterns we're going to discuss as we go forward. But it's very important, if you're playing tennis with a tennis shoe, don't play tennis with a running shoe. I mean, I know it kind of sounds kind of simple, but these are some of the ways that we can control some of these injuries. So again, this is an abstract that was done with football players wearing bladed cleats while others were wearing the studded cleats. And they had 29 healthy male volunteers were recruited. And what they found out is that with two activities, just straight running and cutting at 60 degrees, those that were wearing the bladed versus the studded cleats made by Adidas, that the ones that had the bladed cleats were on the lateral side of the shoes, which created more lateral injury sprains. So, you know, it kind of makes sense. If you dig in and you're going to lift off from the lateral side, you're going to have more torque control, which is going to create an injury. So what they found is that the studded ones on turf, again, that's another thing. What are they playing on, and how does the shoe respond to the material that they're playing on? Followed the more natural motif of the foot. So there's so much to consider. In the conclusion of the studded boot can be considered safer as the pressure distribution across the foot, as I had said, mimics more of the normal motif of the foot, where the bladed boot could potentially be deemed relatively more harmful due to the unnatural increasing load on the lateral half of the foot. In the Journal of Testing and Evaluation, Professor Von Homer in Tennessee, they're studying and creating new devices to check velocity and horizontal forces. So they want to really look at the association between playing surface conditions, the turf or hard court or grass, and how those conditions and injuries have been reported, and numerous devices have been used to measure vertical and horizontal, but not necessarily both of those together. And that's also important information, to have both of those forces. So TAF, Tennessee Athletic Field Tester, you can see there's a little shoe over here. They actually took it out on the field, tested in both velocity and time and horizontal pressure. So the footwear must match the foot shape. And I wanted to just share with you that on the number 1 diagram, that is how a flat foot presents. Not that a flat foot is a bad foot. None of these are bad or good feet. The second one is a normal arch foot. We may say that that person has mild pronation. And on the third, it's a high arch foot, which is a supinated foot. And often patients or athletes that have supinated feet tend to have more of these lateral ankle sprains. It makes sense. Tread and traction. You want to, again, play with the right equipment on the right surface. Sport-specific footwear. If you're a runner, use running shoes. If you're a football player or soccer, use your cleats. So you want to match the shoe with the surface area. So with a clay court, you can see on the right-hand side, that pattern of tread has more herringbone, so that you can have more lateral support for sliding and gripping, where the next one in for hard court has a herringbone pattern, but it's for more shock absorption material. And then the grass court, you want nubs for protection and also lateral support for sliding and cutting. And then, of course, on carpet, you want something very smooth so you're not going to get stuck and trip in your progression. So if the shoe fits, wear it. Properly fit shoes can reduce the impact of each step and cushion the foot from heavy landings. Sport or exercise-specific shoes can improve your performance. For example, quick direction changes, reduce the impact, and quicker stride. And the tread is very important in accommodating this. Injury prevention. The most common prevention is taping. And as I said in the earlier slide, that in that study, they showed that 50% of those injuries could be all prevented through bracing or taping and PT strengthening exercising. All of you, I think, are familiar with these. Low-tie strapping, turf toe, and Achilles tendon strapping, taping. And bracing provides stability and protection, commonly used for sprains, overuse, and ligament injuries. So you can see they could be unilateral, bilateral, upper, lower extremities can all be braced. Often used during practices, sometimes used during games to prevent injuries. I think Dr. McCarty showed you a slide of a young athlete wearing an ankle brace. It's not just to have armor on her knee, but it also gives her appropriate perceptive feedback to control where she's moving in time to protect her from injury. Foot orthoses. Shoe inserts can reduce shear and friction, and they can be used to offload injuries to the foot. Turf toe can be controlled, limiting the motion of the first ray. Metatarsal sesamoid injuries, like Dr. Hunt and Dr. Moon had addressed in injuries. So these can be worn oftentimes in athletic footwear, not necessarily on the court or in the game. And for those very small cleated shoes like soccer players use, you know, they always buy a shoe too small anyway, and they usually want to play barefooted so they can feel everything. You know, we may have to modify inside the shoe to offload those areas as opposed to using a prophylactic orthotic. The future is smart footwear. So Adidas came out with a shoe that they tested with it's automatic capture of information. So it adjusts in function in real time. So smart footwear construction consisted of components with a sensor unit and it has data processing and an actuator. So it can measure and change the direction and function of the foot in real time in the footwear. So there's a lot of stuff coming down in technology with smart footwear, and it is our future. This is what a shoe is available online now that you can buy. It can control the temperature of your foot. What I like is it can count my calories, you know? So, but this is smart footwear, and it will really give our athletes the edge in the game, right? Is remember, every time the foot hits the ground, stuff happens. We have uneven terrain, we have weather conditions, the surface ground that they're in contact with, and impaired balance perception all changes everything. So if we just are mindful that everything happens when the foot hits the ground, we can make a difference. Thank you.